Talktainment Radio Worldwide Sound. Talktainmentradio.com. We give you a reason to come. The world's greatest radio. We give you a reason to stay. Radio, the way it should be heard. You got the power.
The views and opinions expressed are those of the host and guest and not necessarily those of talktainmentradio.com, the management, the staff, or K&E World Network, LLC.
This is the Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on talktainmentradio.com, the world's greatest radio. Radio, the way it should be heard. And now, Mr. Neely Fuller.
If you do not understand white supremacy, which is racism, what it is and how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. Only confuse you. Only confuse you.
Alrighty. Welcome and good morning to talktainmentradio.com, the world's greatest radio, and you are in touch with the Compensatory Concept with Neely Fuller. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and this is radio the way it should be heard. And boy, is it cold here where we are emanating. Man, it's cold. I know Mr. Fuller lives in the D.C. area, and I hope that you weren't hit with that storm. First of all, good morning, Mr. Fuller. How are you, and were you hit with that storm?
I'm still learning, and no, it hasn't been a storm here. You couldn't really call it a storm. Just a light, what they call sprinkling of snow, mixed rain. And the streets are clear and the sun is shining, but it is cold, but not bitterly cold.
Okay, all righty. All righty. Well, let's see, like I said last week before we ended the show. Oh, by the way, if the listeners, if you would like to call in, you can certainly do that by calling 1-877-932-9766. We already have somebody on the line now, but we will get to you. But anyway, that's the number you want to call, 1-877-932-9766, and you can call in and ask Mr. Fuller a question or two, and or if you want to make a quick comment, because we're going to try to get everybody on the line. Okay, to clean up from last week, Mr. Fuller talked about black frat hazing. We discussed that, and he talked about the educational system. But what we did not get to was young black males versus law enforcement. I want to hear what Mr. Fuller has to say about that. Light-skinned people versus dark-skinned people. I don't know why that's a problem, but it certainly is. The so-called Back to Africa movement, somebody wants people to go back to Africa, but what would be the results of that? And I've often heard this, particularly from some of my Muslim brothers, that Jesus Christ as the white man's religion. Hopefully we will get a chance to discuss some of these issues, but it does depend on the nature of the calls that we get in. And before we do that, let's go to the caller. Okay, caller, you are first in line to ask Mr. Fuller a question. Good morning, and how are you?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby, and good morning, Mr. Fuller. Thank you. I just had a quick question about your codes, Mr. Fuller. I've been thinking about health. I don't know where that fits in the 9 areas, and within the past year, I have heard others refer to health as the 10th area. Is health included in some of the other codes, and how would you classify the area or issue of health?
Very good question.
Now, I've just written the 9 major areas of activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Now, people have asked me about adding another area of activity. Actually, you can add thousands of areas of activity. I mean, if you're just going to be specific about what people do. But I thought that those 9 major areas would just about cover everything, and I still think that, because if you have the correct activities going on in economics, in education, in entertainment, in labor, in law, in politics, in religion, in sex, and in war, if you do what you should do, if people conducted themselves in a manner that is that produces constructive results, the equation would be, and the logical conclusion would be, that is health. That would make health. Economics say, starting with that, number one, is the use of time and energy. And I have in the textbook for victims of racism, under economics on page 58, time and energy is what you use all the time. You have time and you have energy. And one of the four things that is listed is how it says you eat correctly and you sleep correctly. Now, if you eat correctly and sleep correctly, and also you use your other time and energy in your interactions with people and all like that, then theoretically you would come to the conclusion that you have a healthy society.
All righty.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All righty. Thank you very much for
you.
that, and fully explained it. So he let you know that there are more or thousands of areas that you could add to the 9 areas of the basic human activities, but these are the ones that he identified as the major areas. Of course, again, you could add your own areas, but that was a good question. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All righty. Okay, we have another call. Let's go. They're ringing, so let's do this. What line, Galen? Number 2? Okay, line number 2. Go ahead. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question for Mr. Fuller? Line number 2?
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a question, and I hope I can get this out in a timely enough manner. I'm trying my best to. But I just had this thought. Now, I have my own theory on this question I'm about to ask, but I want to hear this from you, the source, as the author and source of the book and the concepts within, considering, you put your first draft, I think it was almost 60 years ago, and you've done a couple of revisions since then, including a new book in the past few years. But, and I've been listening to you on this show and various other capacities here in my area and other places for the better part of nearly the past over 10 years now, nearly 15. And I hear, and I'm not speaking for myself or most of the people who call into this particular program week to week, because I think we're getting it, we're understanding it, and we're taking these concepts as best as we can. But overall, I mean, when you look at the big picture within Black America in particular, there's a lot of people out here who are renowned, who are known for putting forth concepts and ideas and things. And I know you're not seeking fame, and I think we have enough of that as it is. But I often hear, I've never heard what you're putting forth, and I have my theory why this is, but I never hear your concept put forth about justice and trying to overcome the system of white supremacy, racism, and so forth on the larger scale. And I'm just curious to know, we often talk about, we spent 50-plus years, a little over 50 years now since the dream, so to speak, King's dream. But where are we today? My question is, where are we today? After all this talking you do, taking floating questions for people in the community and so forth, these past several years of various formats across the country, speaking engagements you do, what is your take? What is your sense of where we are today as it relates to the code? Are we improving? Are we better off today than, let's say, 5, 10, 15 years ago?
All right. Well, let's give him a chance to answer that. Where are we today, Mr. Fuller?
Well, it depends on how a person wants to measure what they call progress or problem solving. And the problem is still the system of white supremacy. And it says in the textbook for victims of white supremacy that I wrote that you can't solve any major problem, period, without solving the problem of white supremacy. So you can do cosmetic jobs. You can do this and make an adjustment here, an adjustment there, but it still is what it is. It's a flawed system, just by its very nature. The system of white supremacy is a flawed, worldwide governmental system. It's the strongest political system and the strongest religious system that the world has ever known. And it's flawed simply because it's designed to harm people. So you can tweak it any way you want to, and people can go around and talk about it and discuss it and we can have Black History Month and all like that, all within the system of white supremacy, but you still have the system of white supremacy. You need an overall system. It has to be changed, and that means all of the people on the planet have to actually change their views of what this business about color and non-color is all about, and then replace it with something better. Presumably, that would be the system of justice, which many people are familiar with the concept of justice, but no one has really taken it seriously. And that would be the guarantee that no person is mistreated, and the guarantee that the person that needs help the most needs the most constructive help. And in answer to your question, that's why it hasn't been done. No one takes the system of justice seriously as the priority for the entire world. We got all other kind of priorities, mostly abstract drama, all in support of the system of white supremacy.
Okay, and your second question quickly.
Going forward, going forward into the future here, and simply because you are more accessible now, and your thoughts and concepts, and people are taking more of them. Again, I'm not throwing this, but what do you see this? Do you see us gaining any traction on this going forward? And if not, what's the likely end result?
No, I don't see us gaining any traction until we adopt a code. That's what's missing. Code means what? An exact way of doing everything. So, and all things that are done every minute of the day by everybody on the planet right this minute is going to fall in one of two categories. It's just two categories of activity, and that is constructive and non-constructive. Every move you make, every time you sit down to eat a meal, that meal is going to produce something that is constructive or non-constructive in your body. Every time you walk down the street, you're walking down the street in order to engage in something constructive or non-constructive. Every time you talk to someone, that conversation is going to have a constructive result or a non-constructive result. There's no such thing as in between. It's going to be one or the other. So ideally, everything, that every move that everybody makes, every breath that everybody takes should be constructive and not non-constructive. That's it.
All righty. Thank you for your call, caller.
All righty.
Let's see. Before Galen gives me the sign, you are listening to the Compensatory Concept with Neely Fuller Jr. here on talktainmentradio.com. This is radio the way it should be heard. And if you would like to get in contact with the show, as the two callers have done already, you can be a participant by calling 1-877-932-9766, and we will get you in. Was that okay, Galen? He's giving me the sign. Okay. The last caller, Mr. Fuller, talked about, he mentioned reference to the book. And before we go to our next caller, just speak a little bit to the book. Again, we do this every week, but we're serious about this. Speak to the book and then how one can get a copy or two of the book.
The basic title is The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. Now, that long title is defined within the book itself. I wouldn't have time to go into the details of what that title means. It's not all that sophisticated, not all that complicated, but it's just the words that I chose to give to the title of the book in order to explain what the book is about. And there's a subtitle that's more explanatory, and that subtitle is A Textbook Workbook for Thought, Speech, and/or Action for Victims of White Supremacy. Now, if a person doesn't perceive him or herself as being a subject to the system of white supremacy, then the book doesn't apply. The book applies to people that believe that racism does exist and that it is a powerful force, at least a powerful force, if not the most powerful force among the people of the planet. So it's designed to help victims get through the day. The individual person. That's why I call it the United Independent System. And you can get this book by going to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com.
All righty. And we'll try to do that at least twice in this show because it is very important that you have the book, read the book, to know it and understand it so that you'll be able to do what you need to do in the struggle. Okay, let's go to line number 3. And what is your call or comment for Mr. Fuller? Go ahead, line 3.
Is this line 3?
There you are. You're the man. Go ahead. Do your thing.
Yes, sir. First of all, I suspect if Mr. Fuller's books become as popular as let's say the King James version of the Bible.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
The problem of racism or white supremacy would be either thoroughly dealt with or seriously damaged. But I wanted to ask the question about the archives. I've been looking on the website, and that last week's archives have not came up yet. Is that correct?
Okay, I think I can answer that. Mr. Fuller doesn't have anything to do with that. That's on this end here on the radio station. I don't know what they are doing exactly. Hopefully, with Ed being, and right now he's the only producer that we have, he has to really put that together. So it hopefully will be up, hopefully today, but I cannot say for sure, but I know that he is working on that. He has quite a few shows that he puts together and does. So he'll be on that, and if not, I will remind him of last week's show. Is that what your question was about, last week's show?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to critique it.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, it's okay. You're you know, even if it is a critique, good. I mean, you know, this is an open forum which allows you to be able to speak any way that you want to speak. Even though we may be under surveillance, and I say that for real because you just never know what's going on. But there are some things that are happening, but it's okay. Now, what is your question for Mr. Fuller?
No, that's
okay.
That's basically what I was calling about.
Okay.
To try to get in touch with someone connected with the company itself to ask about their archives and them being put out in a timely fashion.
Okay. Like I said, I will speak to the person who does that and voice your concerns on that. Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that, brother. All right.
Welcome,
Okay.
Welcome, sir.
Okay. Let's go to line number, what is it, 1? Line number 1, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question, please?
Hello?
Yes, you're on.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Fuller. I have a two-part question. My first part is, has there ever been a time in history where whites have treated non-whites, specifically blacks, equally? And the second part is, are whites inherently evil, or is there something in their character that prevents them from being able to treat non-whites equally?
Okay. Mr. Fuller?
My answer is I don't know. It's a lot of history of this entire planet and of the universe in general. So many things may or may not have happened. And most of history, in my opinion, based on logic, I hope, is that all of history, as it has been told, is seriously flawed. I believe that just about everything that everybody's written about what has happened in the past is seriously flawed. I base that on logic because sometimes people can be looking at things actually on the scene, not to say anything about something they heard, but they can actually, and this has been proven by certain people who have delved into it, that people, 4 or 5 people can stand and look at something that is actually happening right there in front of their eyes. And after the incident has happened, all 4 or 5 of those people will get some details incorrect. And so when you think about all the things that have happened down through the history of the world, well, I mean, and most of what you hear about, because you didn't see it, you weren't there, someone who was there, presumably, or said they were there, or thought they were there, did the recording, because sometimes people who record things weren't there themselves. But it passes down through history as fact, when it may none of it may not have happened at all.
That's right. May not be fact.
It may not be fact. So therefore, I give the basic answer, and that's what codification is supposed to be about.
Yes,
that
sir.
basic answer is, I don't know. But any of these things could be true, or any of these things could not be true.
That's right.
All of the things that people say.
Mm-hmm. And what was the second part of your question, caller?
The second part, I guess he kind of answered was, are whites inherently evil, or is there anything in their character that prevents them from dealing with us in present day equitably?
All righty. Thank you for your question. You care to answer that, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, I say I don't know to that one, because that's something that we can only find out by giving an acid test. And by evil, you have to make comparisons. Evil compared to what? And compared to whom?
Or what is evil?
If you're going to put, so what is evil? And then I guess you would go by what people actually do. So you would have to probably go through a real acid test of all of the people in the universe, white and non-white, and then put categories on it. Okay, evil when it comes to doing what? Evil when it comes to doing this or that. Which area of activity? How long?
Right.
What you do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And last but not least, put that definition on it. What do you mean by evil? Do you mean, in essence, that you are completely incapable of doing anything that we call non-evil? So you would have to put it to a test and have some criteria. That criteria has not been established because, as it stands now, all people, as far as logical observation would prove, are seriously flawed.
Seriously flawed. See, callers, and even for myself, this is why if you listen to the beginning of the show, when he describes racism, notice what he says. You need to understand what it is and how it works. And the bell or the light or whatever went off in me when I grasped that. And that's with anything. You need to understand what it is and how it works. Why? Because if you don't, anything that you say or even think about that will only do what? As he says, it will only confuse you. So it is imperative that you understand what it is and how it works by asking those questions. And I'm telling you, it has really opened up my eyes and helped me a lot, has given me a lot of momentum just with that. And I take that with everything, and you should too. So if you want to understand evil, since you asked that question, understand what it is and then how it works. And then you'll be able to really answer your own question. Are white people really evil? As Mr. Fuller just stated, he didn't know. He doesn't know. Okay, you're listening to the Compensatory Concept here on talktainmentradio.com with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. And if you'd like to get in contact with the show, you can do that by calling 1-877-932-9766. And I am the show co-host, Mr. Bobby. And let's go to line number 2. All righty. Go ahead, caller. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
Hello.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hi, Mr. Fuller. I have a question. Sometimes I try to be codified, and in my effort to be codified, I'll hear sometimes from other non-whites is, why am I being so serious, or I need to relax. Do you have any codified responses for that?
You say what now? I didn't quite get your question.
Well, sometimes, if I'm doing things codified, other people may get the impression that I'm being, really serious, or I'm acting, very seriously. And they'll say that, why am I doing the things that I'm doing, or, I'm doing so much, I need to relax. And, I really don't have any responses to that because, I'm just trying to be, I'm just doing what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if someone, it depends on what you're doing, and if a person, according to the code, if a person asks you a question, why are you doing what you're doing at the time you're doing it, you simply explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's not rocket science. Codification is basically simple. Who, when, what, why, where. These are things that came with the universe. So if a person sees you doing something, and that person says, I'm curious about what you're doing. Why are you doing what you're doing? What is it you're doing? You simply explain what you're doing, if you wish to. You can explain what you're doing and why you're doing it. Now, if they say they don't understand, then you ask a logical question. What is it about what I just said you don't understand? What is it about what you see me doing you don't understand? And you can ask me further questions about what you see me doing or what you hear me saying and why I'm saying it. You can ask questions, and then you go ahead. All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. That's the codified process. Questions and answers. That's all over the universe, everywhere.
Okay. Did that answer your question, caller?
It did. It answered it greatly or accurately.
Okay. All righty. All right. Let's go to line number 3. Go ahead, caller. You're on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Fuller.
Good morning.
I had a question. I don't know if Mr. Fuller is aware about what's going on in Atlanta with the mayor.
You want to cut your radio down, please? Thank you.
Hello?
Yeah, just cut your radio down because we're getting feedback.
I don't have a radio on.
Okay.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I was just hearing a little feedback. Okay, I think it's corrected now. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know if you and Mr. Fuller are aware about what's going on with the mayor of Atlanta, Kasim Reed, versus his former fire chief, in which the fire chief was fired for producing a book that spoke out against homosexuality. And my question to Mr. Fuller is, according to the code on page 87, I'm going to read what he had written. It says, do not accuse any non-white person of being the cause of another non-white person, in quotations, getting in trouble and or getting fired in regards to any employment situation that is directly or indirectly dominated by white supremacists or racists in quotations. So my question is, that situation with the mayor and his fire chief, that directly applies to that statement, Mr. Fuller?
Yes, well, I'm not familiar with the details of that, but it depends on what the fire chief did and what the laws are that govern that. You said he wrote a book about homosexuality. Is that correct?
Yes, he wrote a book speaking against it, and he passed it out amongst co-workers, and he claimed that he had gotten clearance about the book before he passed it out. But, the homosexual community was outraged because he had passed out this book. So he was eventually fired by the mayor, and the mayor stating that he didn't get permission to pass out the book, and that's why he was fired. That he wasn't fired because of his beliefs against homosexuality, but it was because of the fact that he didn't seek permission from the mayor.
Wow. Okay, well, the way that should be handled, according to codified logic and according to the laws of justice, that is, meaning guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help, then you look into the details of whether that was equal treatment. And one of the first things you would do is look into other people who have handed out materials or said certain things on those premises and see if everybody was treated equally. That when it comes to saying things or printing things or handing out pamphlets.
Okay, wait a minute. Hang on, caller. We're going to we'll get you on the other side of the break, so hang on here. talktainmentradio.com. Check us out on WCRS-FM 98.3 Wednesday and Sunday. Evenings, blogs, and podcasts are available. Download the talktainmentradio.com app to your cell or tablet. Listen, we go where you go. Radio the way it should be heard. Stay right there. We're going to answer another couple of questions, have Dr. Fuller talk about his book, or Mr. Fuller talk about his book. That and much more coming up here on talktainmentradio.com.
talktainmentradio.com is the premier internet radio platform offering 40-plus talk radio-style programs professionally produced, optimized for online distribution, featuring Columbus, Ohio on-air personalities. TalkTainmentRadio.com offers listeners diverse programming options covering topics such as arts and culture, love, life and relationships, technology, religion, paranormal activities, local and national politics, women's issues, alongside health and wellness. Listeners can access their favorite TalkTainmentRadio.com programs free of cost through the website. Download the TTR app to your cell phone and you can take us wherever you go. We have programs on demand to fit your schedule through our podcast. The address is talktainmentradio.com.
We can give you a new heart.
We can help you walk again.
We can perform brain surgery.
We can treat a sore throat.
We can bring life into the world.
We can work so many miracles. But the one thing we cannot do is read your mind.
When you communicate with your doctor,
when you ask us more questions,
you reduce your risk of suffering a medical mistake.
Tens of thousands of lives are lost every year due to medical mistakes.
The healthcare community is working on it, but you can help.
Please, open up. Ask more questions.
What are the side effects?
When should I expect my test results?
Will this medication interact with my other prescriptions?
We can't answer if you don't ask.
Help reduce your risk.
Questions are the answer.
Learn the 10 questions you must ask. Visit www.ahrq.gov. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality, and the Ad Council.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him opening his own clothing store at the age of 18? 1 in 138,000. Excited to be a part of pop culture, he packed for the big city. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. I encourage you to learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference.
Brought to you by Autism Speaks, the Ad Council, and TalkTainmentRadio.com, the world's greatest radio.
Goodwill is a global social services enterprise and the leading nonprofit provider of job training programs and career services in the United States and Canada. To pay for its program, Goodwill sells donated clothes and other household items in more than 2,700 stores and online at shopgoodwill.com. Goodwill uses the revenue earned from these sales to fund job training, employment placement services, and other community programs. The goal of the campaign is to increase goods donations to Goodwill, inspire an emotional connection to the Goodwill brand, and to elevate preference for Goodwill.
Supporting minority education. I'm Sean Booker, dammit, from the Melting Pot. I'm here to tell you that as the mother of a high school senior, I know due to financial circumstances, many of America's deserving minority students do not have access to a college education. Since 1944, the United Negro College Fund has sought to provide one. Since 1972, the beginning of this campaign, UNCF has helped more than 300,000 talented students earn a college degree. I'm Sean Booker, dammit. Give a helping hand.
The United Independent Compensatory Code System concept by Neely Fuller is considered as one of the substantial and basic books for understanding and effectively countering racism. Neely Fuller will turn upside down everything you've heard and everything you think you know about racism and how it works. Call area code 202-484-5461. 202-484-5461.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Go ahead. Make my day.
You got the power.
All righty. Galen, you right on it today. Thank you. Okay, let's do it this way. We're going to have a caller. Then I'm going to ask Mr. Fuller that one of those questions that we have lined up for last week. We're going to have him promote that book, and then we're going to go to another caller. So hang on in there if you're on the line. Okay, caller, what is your second question for Mr. Fuller? Go ahead.
Just real quickly, Mr. Fuller, should black people, because both the mayor and the fire chief, they are black, should they be having, public arguments like that against one another in public like that? Like, why do black people always tend to fall for that in this system of white supremacy?
All right.
Or, bickering in front of each other.
Thank you for your call. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
All right.
Yes, one of the 10 stops in the textbook for victims of white supremacy is stop squabbling among yourselves and run into the racists to settle it. And that's one of the 10 suggestions. Everything in the textbook for victims of racism is a suggestion. I mean, addressed to each individual, and each individual looks through it, makes an assessment, makes a judgment on it, and if you can use it, if you agree with it, you do. If you don't agree with it, you simply pass it by. It's like a buffet or a smorgasbord. Just like going down a line in a cafeteria, and you just pick out what you think makes the most sense to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the way that works. So one of these suggestions is black people should stop arguing with each other about anything. They can have discussions, they can have disagreements, different points of view, because the decisions are going to be made by either directly or indirectly by the white supremacists anyway, about whatever black people do. So black people should try to minimize conflict of any kind wherever they happen to be, because they are all under the system of white supremacy. I sometimes often think about the movie Gone with the Wind, and there's a scene in the beginning of that movie where one black person, both of them are working in the field, talking to another black person. One black person looks up and says, "Quitting time," and the other black person says, "You ain't the one supposed to say quitting time. I's the foreman. I'm the one supposed to say quitting time." And then he repeats it, "Quitting time." See, so I think that the reason that was put in that movie was a lesson, really, both, I guess, to black people and white people, but certainly black people should look at it as a lesson to be remembered the whole time they're in the system of white supremacy, and that is neither one of them have any real power. So let the white supremacists make the decision about when there's quitting time, since both of them are on the plantation. And there's no such thing as big Negroes and little Negroes in the system of white supremacy. It is all slaves.
That's an interesting observation that you made there. I never really thought about that like that. That's a good one. Okay, from last week, there was that question that you had mentioned a topic about young black males versus law enforcement. Can you explain that a little bit so that we can have an understanding as to what does Neely Fuller mean by that?
Black males and...
Yeah, you said young, because I wrote it down, young black males, and you had law enforcement.
Young black males in law enforcement?
Yeah.
Or in regards to law enforcement?
In regards to law enforcement.
Do not do anything that you think may get you locked up in what the code calls greater confinement. Black people all over the world are already confined. We are told where we can go and where we bet not go.
Whether we know it or not?
Whether we know it or not. The white supremacists have assigned spaces for non-white people. Go here, go there. Don't you dare go here. Don't you dare go there. Stay away from this place. Stay away from that place. I want you here. You function best in this neighborhood. I will choose what neighborhood you will be in. You will never, ever choose what neighborhood I will be in if I'm a white supremacist, because I go where I please. You black people on this planet go where you're sent. Sent by whom? By a racist man and racist woman. And so, therefore, law enforcement means whatever laws the white supremacists say that the law is. So, black people are going to conform to the white supremacist law anyway.
Okay, well, would that same logic be in effect for the White House in regards to the many incidents that have happened with, well, I guess the latest one was with the drone going over, but people jumping the fence and going up to the White House, shooting and all that kind of stuff. Now, I've not seen that before until this particular president has got in. Is there something to be said about that according to the code as to what's happening in regards to law enforcement?
You suspect, either directly or indirectly, that if it's going to be harmful or threatening to a black president, it's the white supremacists who are behind it. And it could be, and I'm going to say this, a dress rehearsal.
Whoa!
They could be building up, saying all kinds of weird things are happening. Strange creatures creeping around and whatnot, I mean, in the corridors of the White House, and nobody knows that they are there. I mean, bones rattling in the basement because you have a black president up there. Anything might happen. There are flying objects over the White House grounds. Nobody can identify them or what the source is. This is happening. That is happening. Black president, you better watch your step because you might be in the crosshairs. We might have a date set for you.
Wow.
See, that's the way the white supremacists operate. Then on the other hand, it may be all coincidence. But I'm saying, if you're a non-white person on this planet, always suspect that the white supremacists have a plot for each and every non-white person on this planet, because that's what white supremacy is about. And they also have your days numbered. Wow. They can decide at any time when you're going to leave this planet because they have that kind of muscle.
Speaking about muscle, could you muscle in on your book for the second time on this particular program?
Yes, you can get the book by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is a method for ordering the textbook for victims of white supremacy. And if you want the counter-racist word guide, which is an addition to the basic textbook, that's there too. That's a book that's similar to a dictionary. It's not a dictionary.
So it's there to help
it's a
you.
Word guide.
It's there to help somebody understand what's going on in the word guide.
Yes, and some of the words that are used, words to use, words not to use. For example, it's got in it that you never accuse America, ever accuse America of being racist. White supremacists are racist. They are the only people who are racist. There's only one race, and that's the white race. There's no such thing as any human race. That's in there, too. People will sometimes say, oh, it's no black race and white race. It's the human race. No, it's no such thing as a human race because in order to have a human race to start with, which you shouldn't have a human race in the beginning. Because race is racism, which means you mistreat people based on color, and that's not humane. So the word human, the other word associated with that is humane. You don't have humane people. You don't even have humane beings. You don't have human beings on the planet. Why? Because you can't have human beings on the planet and have racism dominating the planet at the same time. Here again, codification is about following logic, not following what Neely Fuller says. Just check out logic.
Yes.
You can't have human beings in an inhuman system. We're not humane yet. It's only when we get rid of racism and all the other evils, then we have an opportunity for the first time to have a population of humane people, of human beings on this planet.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, that last statement just lit up the phone lines, but okay. You're listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. here on talktainmentradio.com, radio the way it should be heard. I am the co-host, Mr. Bobby, and if you would like to get in contact with the show to get your calls on air, you can do so by calling 1-877-932-9766. And let's go to line number one, Galen. Okay, line number one, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your questions, please? Okay. Yeah, okay, there you go. What is your question?
I don't have a question. I have a comment for Mr. Neely Fuller.
Okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to tell him say thank you for being there. I retired 28 months ago after working on a job for 30 years. And I experienced a lot of this racism, white supremacy on my job. But what I would do is I would listen to Neely Fuller and Francis Cress Welsing, and I was very much encouraged by them, which would help me to get through this 30 years of employment. I just wanted to say thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, you want to respond to the thank you?
Well, really, the person can thank him or herself. I mean, for whatever experiences they have, where they figure out how to weave their way through a racist system and do the best possible things that will get them through, because we're all prisoners of war. We still are. I mean, and this war is still going on. So until there's no more talk about racism, no more racial activity nowhere on the planet, we will still have to continue on to try to replace that system with a better system, and logically speaking, that would be a system of justice. Replace white supremacy with justice.
Okay.
That's the slogan.
All righty. Let's go to line number 2. Go ahead, and what is your call for, your question, rather, for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.? Go ahead, line number 2. Okay, yeah, go ahead, line number 2.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. I would like to say, first off, Mr. Fuller, I appreciate your work. I've been listening and reading your book for over 5 years now. I started listening to your lectures and reading your book while in college, and it really helped me tremendously to get through the curriculum of my program that I was doing. I was in the accounting program, and I experienced a lot of anxiety, and it just helped me accomplish and get through a lot of things and obstacles. And it helped me transition into my professional realm. And now it's like it's not stuck to me. It's been carved into my mind.
Okay.
And I appreciate your work. My question is, this is for you had mentioned being the universal man and universal woman in your book, okay? And I remember in one of your lectures you had mentioned that we won't be that perfect person, however, because we will get poisoned by the system. What is I guess you could say, what will be the least amount of poison that we can receive trying to fight this system and produce a system of justice and become the universal man and universal woman?
All righty. Mr. Fuller?
Okay, the equation for the entire book is that truth plus justice plus correctness equals peace. Now, what is truth? Truth is that which is. That's the way explained in the textbook. That which is what? That which is whatever it is. Like we even have a slang among black people. Tell it like it is. So you find out what is actually the truth about everything. Don't be afraid of the truth. And most of the time, the truth about most things in the world the way that it is very hurtful, because there's a lot of things, a lot of flaws that black people have themselves. If you tell the truth, just tell it like it is. I mean, we have flaws. We don't interact with each other very well. We must admit that. We are not, we talk about this black love and whatnot. It doesn't exist. We need to face up to that. Now, what do we do about it? Because codification is about what you do. So you start with, okay, that being the case, we don't interact with each other very well. We're very non-constructive when it comes to the way we interact with each other. So what do we do about it? Everything is about doing something. If you're talking about making what you call progress. So codification is about doing something. What do? You minimize contact, and therefore you minimize conflict. So a person might say, and justifiably so, well, what do you mean, minimize contact? You got to have contact. I mean, you're all together and whatnot, and, you interact. But what you do is measure how you're going to contact. If you can deliberately have some decisions about how you're going to make deliberate contact, it's the quality of that contact that you can measure. Mm-hmm. You can control that, which means what? You don't make any contact with anybody unless it's going to have a constructive result, and you think about that constructive result before you make that contact. Case in point, I was looking the other day at a movie clip from Boys in the Hood, and something that I have often cited down through the years, a bunch of young black males on a porch. And on this particular scene, they were all on a porch in Los Angeles, I believe. And they were just what you call kicking it, talking back and forth and whatnot. And then a couple of the brothers, I think one brother, they were actual brothers, blood brothers, they got into a fight. And then the other people were, trying to break it up, and some people cheering it on, like black people sometimes do. And then that scene was extended because it had something to do with the Crips and Bloods and gangs. And then a gang car came into the neighborhood, and then they went through that script, which means they started shooting at each other. So these are the kind of contacts that too many black people throughout the world, like right this morning, I looked in the paper in Nigeria. I mean, somebody went into a church and killed a bunch of people, shot a girl's arm off, and all this type of thing. See, contacts, kind of contacts that people make with each other. See, black people carry a lot of poison that's been put there by the white supremacists. So every time we make contact, we have to tell the truth about that. Every time we make contact, there's a certain amount of poison that starts coming to the surface. So we have to understand that and believe it because it's true. Mm-hmm. The evidence shows it.
The evidence shows it.
So therefore, if we plan our contacts in advance and say, look, if I contact you for any reason, it's going to have a constructive result. Nobody's going to be harmed. Everybody's going to be helped. Now, if I can't think of some reason to contact you with that constructive result, then I don't contact you at all, and you don't contact me. We stay away from each other. This old cliche about black people got to get together, no. Black people need to stay away from each other because we're poisonous.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that call. 1-877-932-9766 is the number if you'd like to get in contact with Mr. Fuller. Line number 3, you're on.
Hi, it's me?
Yes, you're on.
Oh, okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
I always enjoy your show.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'll make it kind of quick.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd like for you to elaborate on white supremacy in our churches.
White supremacy in the churches?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And how can the people that are members of their churches change their traditional rules?
Okay, we have
a beautiful day, and I always enjoy your show, and just an excellent show.
Okay.
Good work.
We'll try to get Mr. Fuller to answer that as the time is winding down. Thank you for your call. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Well, that's one of the 9 areas of activity, religion. That's the 7th area in alphabetical order. And what is a religion? Religion is a strong belief backed up by action. Now, there in the Christian religion in the Northwestern Hemisphere, many black people are members of the Christian church, and they have adopted the Christian religion. But now Martin Luther King has said that on Sunday mornings, how come black people and white people are not sitting in the same church? And I thought about that years ago because I said, actually, the houses of prostitution are more so-called black and white together.
Integrated.
On a Sunday morning after a Saturday night. Truth be told, nightclubs and all like that. Yes, white and black together when it comes to any kind of carrying on like that, okay? But when it comes to what you call worshiping Jesus or God or the Creator or whatever, how come black people and white people can't sit side by side? A lot of people come together basically in a spiritual way, what they claim, what they always sing about and clap hands about and say that they wish and all like that. But it's kind of weird. If you look at it logically, it seems like black people and white people, if they couldn't get along any other time of the week, on Sunday morning they could all just throw their arms around each other and then say that they love each other and they're going to look out for each other and nurture each other and then set up the jobs and the education, business deals, because a lot of business deals are made in some churches.
That's just true.
See what I mean? So let's just tackle that. I mean, from the beginning.
Okay.
How come that's not the priority? I mean, now some people might say, well, I don't know, we might have problems when it comes to the choir. Yes, that would be a problem because the style of singing is different. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir doesn't sound like the way black people, you might say, execute their ceremonies when it comes to choirs. And so, but that shouldn't be a priority if you're talking about making connection with the Creator, which is what this is all supposed to be about. They sing songs saying the Creator can handle everything.
So
there's nothing the Creator can't handle.
You should be able to handle that.
But how come black and white are not in the same building every Sunday morning in huge numbers, working out all their differences right there in front of, quote, unquote, the Lord?
Okay, now our time is short, and we're probably not going to be able to get them all in, but let's go to line number 2. Thank you, caller. Go ahead. Call number 2. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Fuller.
Yeah, real quick, because we only got a few minutes.
Here you go, Mr. Fuller. Back up in Cleveland where you had the little 12-year-old boy out there playing with a toy gun, which people thought were real, and the police officers pulled up on him. They shot him with less than 2 seconds of getting out the car. And, my opinion was that they didn't see him as a 12-year-old boy. They saw him as an African-American male with a gun in his hand. So here's my question. When the white supremacists, when they see people of color, what exactly do they see when they see us?
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Well, you'd have to ask them, the people who do the shooting. What do they see? I mean, and get them to try to answer honestly and whatnot. But the assumption in the system of white supremacy, if you're a black male in the system of white supremacy, consider yourself a prisoner of war. So being a prisoner of war, if someone sees you with something that looks like a gun in your hand, and you're a prisoner of war, and the warriors against you are white people with guns, then you can suspect that you most likely will get shot dead. So I have said, like I've said all through the book, that black males in particularly, and black females, a growing number of black females, when you're approached by any white person, I mean, in what you might consider a potentially hostile situation, that's all it is, a potentially hostile situation, show no signs of doing anything that might hint of aggression or resistance, because you're already a prisoner of war. You're surrounded by enemies. You have to have that mentality every minute of every day, and you have to teach it to young people.
Yes.
Otherwise, they won't understand.
They will not understand.
And say, don't argue. If someone approaches you with a badge and a gun, don't argue. Don't run. Don't resist. Now, some people say, well, you might get shot anyway. Well, that's what goes with the title of prisoner of war. Yeah. If you're a prisoner of war and you're in a prison camp, you might get shot anyway. That goes with the territory.
Okay, listen, when we hear the music, it's time to go. But listen to the 2 callers that are on the line. This is what I'm going to do. Whatever your question is, write it down, okay? Write your questions down. And then next week when we have the show again, tell Galen that you were one of the 2 callers that was on the line, and then we'll move you up so we can get you in. We just ran out of time. Thank you for all of the calls. Thank you, Mr. Fuller, for all the information you have given us. This is talktainmentradio.com, the world's greatest radio the way it should be heard.
Thanks for listening to The Compensatory Concept with Mr. Neely Fuller, heard exclusively on talktainmentradio.com, the world's greatest radio.
The most important question in all racial matters is why. One should always ask it.
Radio, the way it should be heard.
You got the power. The world's greatest radio. talktainmentradio.com.